People see the success, the house on the hill, the company name etched into the lobby glass, and they think I've always had it easy. But what they don't see, what they'll never understand, is the weight that comes with building everything from scratch while raising a daughter alone. I wasn't just a provider. I was the nurse, the chauffeur, the late-night homework checker, the only face in the crowd at every dance recital and science fair. Her mother left when our daughter was barely 4 years old. Said she couldn't breathe in the life we built, like stability was a noose and not a gift. She left a note on the counter and didn't even take her favorite coffee mug. I remember washing that mug the next morning, numb and aching, trying to figure out how I was going to explain to my baby girl why mommy wasn't coming home. I poured myself into work because I had to, because there was no plan B. My construction business was still young, barely bringing in enough to cover daycare and groceries. I'd wake up at 4, drive out to sites, come back to make her breakfast, and then head back out again. I made sure every birthday had a cake, every Christmas morning had magic, even when the budget was tight. She used to sit on my lap while I reviewed blueprints and say, "Daddy, I want to build things like you one day." That used to melt me. I never missed a birthday, not once. I made her lunches with little notes inside. On the day of her 8th grade graduation, I left a client meeting early and drove 3 hours just to make it on time, still wearing my steel-toe boots and dust-covered jeans. She ran into my arms when she saw me. Back then, I thought that bond was unshakable. When her mother reappeared years later with a new man in tow, I didn't cause a scene. I could have. God knows I had enough reason to. But I figured, maybe it was good for our daughter to have more people who loved her. That's all I wanted. I stayed out of the way. I paid for her college, set her up with her first car, and when she said she wanted to start a boutique marketing firm, I gave her seed capital and a small office in one of my properties rent-free. I even made her an official partner in one of my smaller ventures, just so she'd have an income. She thanked me, sure, but over time, the thank yous became less frequent, the check-ins more rare. Birthdays came and went with nothing more than a casual text, if that. I told myself it was just growing pains, that she was busy, distracted, building her own life. But deep down, something hollow was beginning to grow inside me. The first time she forgot my birthday, I brushed it off. She probably got the date mixed up, I told myself, even though it had always been the same, September 17th. The second time, I got a voicemail 2 days later. "Oh my God, Dad. I totally spaced. Work's been insane. Love you." I said it was fine. The third time, I didn't even hear from her. I found out she was in Cabo with friends, her Instagram full of poolside selfies and mojitos. The fourth time, she posted a throwback of her and her stepdad at a vineyard with the caption, "Best man I know. Love you, Pops." No mention of me. No text. Nothing. And yet, I still sent her a gift that year. A custom leather briefcase with her initials engraved. She never acknowledged it. By the 5th time, I told myself I was done hoping. But something in me still waited. It's pathetic, isn't it? A grown man, a father, waiting like a forgotten child to be remembered. That morning, I checked my phone more times than I care to admit. Noon passed. Then evening. Not a word. But just before bed, I opened Facebook. I don't know why. Habit, maybe. There she was, tagged in a smiling photo with her mother and stepdad. Matching lays around their necks, coconut drinks in hand, sun setting behind them. The caption read, "Happy birthday to the most amazing man. You are the best to ever happen to Mom and I. I wish you were my real dad. You deserve the world. And I hope this trip to Hawaii shows just a fraction of how much we love you." I read it again, then again, 10 times, 100. Each word punched me in the gut like I was some ghost haunting a life I used to be central to. Wish you were my real dad. My chest tightened so hard it felt like my ribs were splintering from the inside. I scrolled through the comments, her friends praising how sweet and adorable the gesture was. One even said, "You've always been so lucky to have him." Another, "Real dads show up. You got the right one." That one made my vision blur. I sat there in the dark, phone glowing in my hand, heart splitting open. All I could think was, I built that life. I paid for those plane tickets. I funded that marketing firm. I bought the house they're living in. I paid for her wedding, for her car, for her damn company cards. I suddenly remembered approving a $6,000 charge labeled corporate retreat. That must have been the trip. She used my money to gift another man a dream vacation and tell the world he was the father she wished she had. That was the moment something broke in me, not out of anger, but out of clarity. I stood up, walked to my desk, and opened my ledger. I didn't even hesitate. First, I canceled her business card, then her company privileges. Then I made a call to my property manager and told him I wanted the house reallocated, donated to the local orphanage we sponsor. I didn't even flinch. I wasn't being spiteful. I was choosing myself for once. I had poured every ounce of love, time, and money into a child who had made it painfully clear that I was invisible. And I realized in that moment, if she didn't see me, then she didn't need what came from me either. The morning after I read her post, I didn't feel angry. Not at first. I felt hollow, like someone had scooped out the middle of me and left just enough skin to keep walking around. There was a strange stillness in my house, in my chest, in the way I moved through my morning routine. I poured my coffee, sat at the same kitchen table I'd sat at every morning for the last 15 years, and stared at nothing. The Hawaii photos were still playing on a loop in my head. Her smile, the drink in her hand, the way she leaned on him like a child leans on someone they trust. I couldn't stop thinking about those words. I wish you were my real dad. It felt like my daughter had taken a knife to the one thing I had always believed was unshakable, our bond. I gave her life. I gave her everything I had. And in return, she gave my title to someone else. Eventually, the stillness broke, but not with rage, not with shouting. No, something colder crept in. Something clearer. I opened my laptop and began reviewing every expense from the last 2 years tied to her company credit card and our shared accounts. I couldn't believe what I found. Thousands in designer clothes. Spa retreats listed as client development. Plane tickets, first class, not coach. Lavish dinners at places I'd never even been invited to. She had been using my money, not just for her personal indulgences, but for her mother and her mother's husband. The pattern was obvious. I saw overlapping charges for their Hawaii trip, hers, her mother's, and his. They'd booked under the company name, had the audacity to run it through a business account, and not even try to hide it. And all the while, I was sitting here, wondering if maybe I had done something wrong, wondering if I hadn't loved her loud enough. I spent most of that morning on the phone. I called the bank and revoked every single access she had, credit cards, savings contributions, auto transfers. Then I contacted HR at my company and formally terminated her employment, effective immediately. I knew there would be fallout. But I also knew this. I wasn't going to bankroll my own erasure. I wasn't going to keep bleeding so she could live a lie that painted another man as her provider, her real dad. No, that door was shut now. Then I called the director of the Children's Foundation I'd worked with for years and told them I had a fully furnished house ready for transfer. I wanted it to go to young mothers who had aged out of the foster system. The idea brought a strange sense of peace. That house had been built with love, my love, and if my daughter couldn't see the value in that, then maybe someone else would. I half expected her to show up that afternoon, pounding on the door, demanding to know what I'd done. But instead, I got silence. Deafening, deliberate silence. And then, around 8 p.m., the first message came in. A simple text. Dad, did you cancel my card? I stared at it for a long time. No greeting. No how are you? Just straight to the inconvenience of losing access to the funds. I didn't reply. I wanted her to sit with it for a while, to feel the weight of what she'd done. But she didn't wait. 5 minutes later, another message came in. Is this about the Hawaii trip? It wasn't even that big of a deal. My jaw clenched. Not that big of a deal. You spend my money flying another man to paradise. Call him the father you wish you had. And that's nothing? I turned off my phone. The next morning, I checked my email and found a flurry of attempts, 2 voicemails, 5 unread messages, even a LinkedIn connection request. That one made me laugh bitterly. Was she trying to reach me professionally now? As if we were strangers? I clicked on the voicemail transcripts. Her voice was shaky, rushed. Dad, listen, I think there's a huge misunderstanding. Can we please talk? I didn't mean to hurt you. Please call me. And yet, nowhere in those messages was an apology. Not for the spending. Not for the post. Not even for the years of distance. Just vague sentiments meant to draw sympathy. I closed the emails and went about my day. I had a board meeting that afternoon and found myself more focused than I'd been in months. For the first time in years, I wasn't being pulled in 20 different directions trying to fix someone else's life. I was just a man doing his job, and I liked it. 2 days later, my assistant poked her head into my office. "She's here," she said gently. I looked up. "My daughter." She nodded. "Said she won't leave unless she talks to you." I took a deep breath. Let her wait. I let her sit out there for over an hour before I stepped into the reception area. She looked smaller than I remembered, dressed in high-end athleisure. No makeup, hair tied in a messy bun. But her eyes were tired, rimmed red. When she saw me, she stood up quickly. "Dad, please, can we talk?" I didn't say a word. I just nodded toward the conference room. She followed me in, and for a second, I saw a flicker of the little girl I used to tuck in at night. The one who made me Father's Day cards with glitter glue and crayon hearts. But that image vanished the moment she opened her mouth. "I think you're overreacting. That post, it wasn't meant to hurt you. It was just a nice thing to say to him on his birthday." I stared at her. "Do you really believe that?" She blinked, thrown off. "I mean, yeah, he's been there for me, and I haven't." I asked, voice low. "Who paid for that trip?" She looked down. "Dad, come on." "No. Say it." "You did." "And who paid for the house you're living in?" "You did." "And the car?" "The company." "You did," she whispered. "Then why?" I said slowly. "Did you feel the need to tell the world that someone else deserved to be called your father?" She started to cry. "I was just trying to make Mom happy. She's been through so much, and he treats her well, and—" "So you erased me?" I asked. "You replaced me to make her feel better?" I didn't mean it like that. I leaned back in my chair. Intentions don't matter when the impact is this loud. You made your choice, and I've made mine. The thing about endings is that they never come all at once. You imagine a clean break, a final line drawn in the sand, but in real life, endings unravel slowly, like a fraying thread you finally decide to cut before the whole thing comes undone. That day in the conference room, after I laid out the truth in front of her and she had nothing left to say, there was a silence between us so dense it felt like it could crush the air in the room. She sat across from me, tearful but not remorseful, at least not in the way I needed her to be. She cried because the walls were closing in, not because she understood how deeply she had wounded me. I waited, hoping she'd say something different, something real, but she didn't. And I realized then I wasn't going to get the version of her I remembered. I was looking at a stranger who wore my last name like a costume she could take off when it no longer served her. After she left, I stood at the window of my office for a long time, watching the traffic pass below, headlights blurring in the early dusk. I knew what I had to do next, and it hurt more than anything I'd done so far. But pain, I was learning, wasn't always a reason to stop. Sometimes it was the very proof that you were finally making the right decision. I picked up the phone and called my lawyer. I had a property transfer to finalize and a new set of directives for the business. I removed her name from every legal document she was ever tied to. Her position at the company was terminated officially, and I arranged for her severance package to include nothing more than the final paycheck she had earned. No bonuses, no soft landings. If she wanted to build something, she'd have to do it on her own now. I wasn't going to bankroll disrespect, not anymore. It didn't take long for word to spread. My brother called me the next morning, voice low and careful, the way people speak when they're not sure which side of the fire you're on. "Hey man, I heard about the fallout," he said. "You mean the cutoff?" I corrected him. He sighed. "I get it, I do. But don't you think maybe it was a little harsh? She's still your daughter." "No," I said flatly. "She used to be. Now she's someone who traded in her father for a man who buys my ties and plays house." He paused. "That's cold. Not as cold as being erased by the person you raised." He didn't argue after that. Later that week, she showed up at the house, the big, modern one I'd built back when I thought I'd have grandkids running through the halls, Sunday dinners, and birthdays worth remembering. She didn't knock at first, just stood there on the porch, looking at the door like she didn't know whether she was still allowed to walk through it. Eventually, she rang the bell. I opened it, looked her in the eyes, and waited. She didn't bring flowers. Didn't bring anything. "I need to talk to you," she said. "You're here to ask me for help," I said back. Aren't you? She hesitated. Yes. I stepped outside and closed the door behind me. You're not welcome in this house anymore, I said. This home was built on love and loyalty, and you brought neither. Her eyes widened. You're really cutting me off? Over one post. I nearly laughed, but there was no humor left in me. It wasn't just the post. It was the 5 forgotten birthdays. The lies. The money. The way you made me invisible in front of the world. You want to know when I made this decision? The minute I saw you spend my money celebrating a man who did nothing for you. A man who came around when the hard work was already done. You didn't just dishonor me. You betrayed everything I built. Tears streamed down her face, and for a moment, I almost softened. But then I remembered how it felt to read those words, how I stayed up all night wondering if the years of love I gave were ever even real to her. Please, she whispered. Everything's falling apart. I don't know what to do. Figure it out, I replied. Just like I did when I was your age and raising you on my own. You think life gives you handouts? No, it gives you choices. And you made yours. The next day, I officially turned the house over to the orphanage. I handed the keys to a young woman from the foundation who cried when I told her what it meant. She hugged me, this stranger who had nothing to offer me except gratitude, and I felt something shift in my chest, something I hadn't felt in a long time. Peace, because the love I gave that house was finally going to someone who might actually treasure it. She tried reaching me again later that week. Texts, voicemails, even a handwritten letter. In it, she talked about stress, confusion, the pressures of marriage, and how she never meant to hurt me. But never, not once, did she say the words I needed to hear. I'm sorry. Not just for what she did, but for who she became. For the entitlement. For the blind spot she chose to have when it came to me. I folded the letter neatly and placed it in the drawer where I keep things I'll never need again. Like expired warranties or broken watches. Things that once had value but no longer tell time. That weekend, I sat on my back patio, drinking a glass of bourbon, watching the sun dip behind the trees. The silence felt different now. Not empty, but earned. The quiet of a man who had done the hard thing and survived it. I wasn't celebrating, but I also wasn't grieving anymore. I was just being present, whole in a way I hadn't been since she first called him Dad. It started with a phone call from a number I didn't recognize, just a random string of digits with no contact name, no history. I let it ring. It went to voicemail. A few minutes later, the transcript came through on my phone, and I read the first line before my thumb froze over the delete button. Dad, I don't know where else to go. It was her voice. Smaller now. Stripped of its edge. I played the message, and even though I promised myself I was done, I listened. She sounded different. Hoarse, like she hadn't slept, like the strong, defiant woman who called me cold weeks ago had been replaced by someone unraveling. I know I messed up, she said, but everything's gone. He left. The business is over. I don't even know how to pay rent. Please, Dad. I need help. Just, please call me back. But I didn't. I couldn't. That night, I poured myself a drink and sat in the living room in complete darkness, the only sound coming from the old grandfather clock ticking away in the hallway. I didn't feel triumphant. I didn't feel vindicated. I just felt tired. This was the part they don't show in the movies. The long stretch after you stand up for yourself, where you have to sit with the weight of your decision and the silence that comes after. I wasn't celebrating her downfall. I took no pleasure in her struggle. But I also knew that picking up that phone meant inviting the same cycle back into my life. I had loved her unconditionally for over 2 decades, but love without boundaries wasn't noble. It was self-destruction with a sentimental excuse. A few days later, she showed up again. This time not at my office or the old house, but here, my home. I didn't hear the knock right away. I was out in the garden, trimming hedges, trying to find some kind of rhythm again. When I finally opened the door, there she was, hair undone, face pale, clothes rumpled like she'd slept in them. Her eyes scanned mine like she was searching for the father she remembered, the one who used to make her waffles on Sunday mornings and wrap her in a blanket when she fell asleep on the couch. Can I come in? She asked, barely above a whisper. No, I said, stepping out onto the porch and closing the door behind me. She looked like she'd been slapped. You're really going to stand there and do this? I'm not doing anything, I replied. You are. This is the result of your choices. She broke then, words tumbling out of her like a dam finally cracked. He left me, Dad. He said he couldn't deal with the pressure anymore. That he wasn't signing up to be broke. The company's gone under. I didn't know how bad it was until I tried to pay the employees last week and the account was empty. I thought we had enough. You thought wrong, I said, cutting in. Because you never learned to manage. You learned to depend. On you, she snapped. No, I said calmly. On whoever made life easier at the time. Sometimes it was me. Sometimes it was your mother. Sometimes it was that man you called Dad in front of the world. But now that none of us are available the way you want, you're suddenly realizing what accountability tastes like. She sank down onto the porch step, hands buried in her face. For a long time, she didn't speak. And neither did I. I didn't rush to fill the silence like I used to. I didn't reach for my wallet or ask how I could fix it. I let her sit in the reality she had built. Because for once, it was hers to deal with. After a while, she looked up at me, tears streaking down her cheeks. I was angry, she admitted. At Mom, at everything. I guess I blamed you for the divorce, even though I know you didn't leave. And when he came along and made things easy, I leaned into it. I wanted to believe someone could replace the messiness. But I was wrong. And I know I hurt you. I know I've taken advantage of everything you gave me. I listened. I really did. And part of me wanted to pull her into a hug, to tell her it was okay, that we'd figure it out. But then I remembered what it cost me to get to this point. The therapy. The nights I spent questioning my worth as a father. The friends who told me to let go years ago. The man I nearly lost in the process of loving someone who had grown comfortable ignoring me. You can cry here, I said. You can even talk. But you can't stay. I won't be funding your next chapter. She looked at me like I was some kind of stranger. So that's it. That's boundaries, I said. That's what loving you with clarity looks like now. Later that night, I got a call from my sister. Word had gotten around again. She's telling everyone you've turned your back on her, she said. A few cousins are saying it's cruel, that you're acting out of spite. I sighed. Let them talk. They weren't there when she forgot 5 of my birthdays in a row. They weren't there when she drained my accounts to fly another man to Hawaii and call him the best thing to ever happen to her. Let them have their opinions. I've got the truth. You sure you're okay? No, I said. But I'm clearer than I've ever been. I thought cutting her off would bring peace. And in some ways, it did. But what I hadn't expected, what no one prepares you for, was the backlash that came from people who only knew half the story. The phone calls started trickling in about a week after our last conversation. First, from relatives I hadn't spoken to in months. Then, old family friends who hadn't reached out to me since the wedding I paid for but wasn't thanked at. Suddenly, everyone had something to say. Some came cloaked in concern, others were bold enough to call me heartless. It amazed me how quickly people forgot the years I carried her on my back. Not one of them had seen the silent sacrifices. Not one of them had scrolled past the Facebook post that gutted me or traced the money trail that propped up her fantasy life. But there they were, lining up to shame me for finally saying, enough. One of the worst calls came from her mother. I hadn't heard from her directly in almost 5 years. Our conversations had mostly filtered through lawyers or been limited to polite nods at family events. But this time, she called me like we were still tangled in each other's lives, like we were still parents trying to fix a broken bicycle in the middle of the living room. She's hurting, she said, her voice tight with disapproval. You've completely shut her out. She shut me out years ago, I replied calmly. You're being vindictive, she snapped. No, I said. I'm being done. She tried to guilt me into softening, bringing up our daughter's childhood, how hard it was for her to navigate our divorce, how her choices weren't malicious, just immature. But the thing was, I'd already made excuses for her for years. I had told myself those exact things during every missed birthday, every forgotten Father's Day, every moment she called another man the name I carried like a badge of honor through every late night and scraped knee. I told her mother that, too. And when she fell silent, I knew even she couldn't argue with the truth. But the storm didn't end there. A few days later, one of my younger cousins sent me a screenshot. There it was, a public Facebook post written by my daughter. Sometimes the people who raise you are the ones most capable of betrayal. I trusted him. I needed him. And when life got hard, he closed the door in my face. Not every parent loves unconditionally. Some only love when it's convenient for them. Underneath were comments filled with sympathy and heart emojis. You deserve better. Parents like that don't deserve kids. I'm so sorry you're going through this. I stared at the screen for a long time. Not angry. Not even shocked. Just heavy. I had carried her when she couldn't stand. I had filled in every blank space her mother left behind. I built her a life. And now, she had turned my boundaries into a narrative where she was the victim and I was the villain. I could have replied. Could have posted bank statements, old emails, photos of every birthday card she forgot. But I didn't. I left a single comment beneath her post. Sometimes love looks like letting go. And sometimes letting go is the only way to survive. That comment didn't spark an argument. In fact, it sat there mostly untouched, one small line buried beneath dozens of affirmations for her. But I didn't post it for them. I posted it for me. A marker in the ground. Proof that I was no longer interested in debating my pain or justifying my healing. Ironically, that post didn't just echo through Facebook. It began to show up in real life. At church, a few people started giving me strange looks. One woman I'd known for years leaned in and said, "Praying for your family. I hope things can be repaired." At the local store, I overheard two acquaintances whispering just loud enough for me to catch my name. I became the subject of passive-aggressive conversations, people who knew nothing about the years of quiet neglect I endured painting me with the brush of bitterness. It reminded me just how easily the world sympathizes with tears, but rarely questions their cause. And yet, not everyone turned away. One evening, my longtime friend and business partner, Carl, invited me over for a drink. We'd built our first duplex together back when we were both young and reckless and surviving on vending machine coffee. "I saw the post," he said, handing me a glass. I nodded. "Let me guess. You're here to tell me to patch things up?" "Nope," he replied. "I'm here to tell you I'm proud of you." That stopped me cold. You did what most parents are too afraid to do. You stopped enabling. You chose your sanity over an illusion of closeness. That takes guts. We sat in his backyard for hours, sipping bourbon and talking about things that had nothing to do with betrayal. It was the first time in months I felt like a man again, not a father scrambling to prove his worth, not a scapegoat. Just me. But even as I found moments of peace, the emotional weight lingered. I would lie awake at night, staring at the ceiling, wondering how it had come to this. How the little girl who used to fall asleep on my chest during movie nights had grown into a woman who could erase me with a single sentence online. I thought about the things I would have done differently. Maybe I should have been tougher earlier. Maybe I loved too freely. Maybe I made it too easy to forget me. But those thoughts were fleeting, replaced by the deeper truth. I had always shown up. I had always loved her the best way I knew how. And now, I was just doing what I should have done long ago, loving myself, too. In the months that followed the fallout, life didn't go back to normal. It shifted into something entirely new. And in that stillness, something strange happened. I started breathing differently. My chest felt lighter. My steps, slower but more certain. The house, once echoing with silence that used to haunt me, now settled into peace. I rearranged the furniture. I threw out things I'd kept out of obligation, photos, clothes, trinkets she left behind that once made me feel closer to her. I repainted the guest room where she used to stay during college breaks. That blue wall I once stared at, wondering when she'd come home, became a warm gray instead. Something neutral, something grounded. That room was no longer waiting for her return. And maybe neither was I. I started waking up earlier again, not out of stress or anxiety, but because the mornings had finally returned to being mine. I found myself cooking breakfast just for me. Eggs the way I liked them, coffee with that bitter roast she always complained about. I read the paper again. I started jogging. It was strange how much space came back to my life once I stopped filling it with someone else's chaos. And then one afternoon, I drove by the house I had donated, the one she and her husband used to live in. I parked across the street and just sat there for a while. There were new tenants now. Young women, some with babies on their hips, others sitting on the porch in folding chairs laughing about something on someone's phone. It was alive again, not with luxury, but with gratitude. One of the girls looked up, noticed me, and waved. I smiled back. In that moment, I felt something I hadn't in years. purpose without strings. But the past has a way of tapping you on the shoulder, even when you've closed the door. One afternoon, I got a letter in the mail. No return address, just my name scrawled in handwriting I recognized instantly. It was from her, my daughter. I sat with it in my hands for a long time before opening it. My hands didn't shake. My heart didn't race. I was curious, but steady. Inside, she'd written 3 pages, long-winded, emotional, uneven. She apologized. Not just for the post, or the spending, or the public shaming. She apologized for forgetting me, for assuming I'd always be there no matter what. She admitted she let comfort and ego blind her, that she had spent the last 2 months in therapy, that she was working at a bakery now, waking up before dawn and standing on her feet for minimum wage. I see now, she wrote, what it means to build something from nothing. I think I finally understand what you gave me, and what I took for granted. I reread that letter twice. I didn't cry. I didn't rush to forgive her, but I acknowledged it. I folded it neatly and placed it on my desk, not in the drawer where things go to die, but right there beside my ledger and pen. I wasn't ready to write back. Maybe I never would. But there was something about seeing her reach, not demand, that touched a very old part of me. A quiet corner of my heart that still remembered her as the little girl in pigtails who once drew me a crayon picture and called me her hero. A few weeks later, my sister called again. This time, her tone was different. Softer. She's been helping out at the community shelter, she said. Not asking for anything. Just showing up. That's good, I said. She's not the same, my sister added. I'm not either, I replied. And that was the truth. Somewhere along the way, I stopped needing an apology to move forward. I wasn't holding a grudge. I was holding a boundary. And that's a difference most people don't understand. People think choosing yourself means you don't love the other person anymore. But I did. I still do. I probably always will. But love without respect is just performance. And I'd spent too many years being the actor in someone else's story, waiting for applause that never came. One morning, while walking through the local park, I ran into an old friend, Deborah, someone I hadn't spoken to much since my daughter's wedding. She was walking her dog, and we stopped to chat. I heard what happened, she said. And I just want to say, I think you did the right thing. Even if everyone else thinks I'm the villain? I asked. She laughed. Oh, people love villains. They make stories easier to tell. But I know what it's like to give until there's nothing left. At some point, the giving has to stop, or you lose yourself completely. That stuck with me, because that's what it had all boiled down to. For years, I thought being a father meant endless sacrifice. That the more I gave, the more worthy I became. But that's a trap, one they don't warn you about. The truth is, sacrifice without recognition becomes expectation. And expectation, when left unchecked, breeds entitlement. My daughter didn't start off ungrateful. She was made that way, by circumstances, by her mother's narratives, and yes, by me. I made it too easy. I never let her see me bleed. I gave without pause. And in doing so, I taught her to believe I would always be there, no matter what she said or did. That was on me. But breaking that cycle? That part was mine too. So here I am now, older, wiser, and finally at peace. My house is quieter, but it's full of clarity. My phone rings less, but the people who call actually ask how I'm doing. I don't check Facebook anymore. I don't need to. My worth isn't tied to public approval or sentimental captions. It's rooted in every hard choice I made to save myself. Will I ever reconcile with her? I don't know. That's not a question I ask myself anymore, because my healing doesn't hinge on her growth. I hope she continues becoming a better version of herself, but whether she does it near me or far away is entirely up to her. I chose me, and I'd do it again. Sometimes the hardest thing isn't letting someone go. It's choosing to stop saving people who never noticed you were drowning. If this story hit home, if you've ever had to walk away from someone you love just to find yourself again, share your experience in the comments. Don't forget to like and subscribe if you believe in the power of boundaries and self-preservation. Your story matters too. See you soon in the next one.